Alright guys, we can finally get going here. Got the air nice and cool. It's a pretty hot one today, so let's get going. We'll go for a little spin here. Lights are on, seatbelt are on, all that stuff is good. Don't know what that truck's doing there. I think I scared him. This is the Cummins powered International Durastar 4300. It's 220 horsepower, 6.7. I have driven plenty of the Max Force DT Durastars, and I just haven't been impressed yet. I have driven the Freightliner M2 with the Cummins, and that impressed me far more than the Max Force did. Now, as far as I was concerned, the Max Force was, I don't know anybody who considered that acceptable engine like response and tone, like how loud the engine is. I thought it was completely absurd how loud it was and how unresponsive the engine is. Now this Penske International, it does a little better with the Cummins in it. As far as I can tell, it's a little bit more peppier. Of course, it's only 220 horsepower, so it's like the bottom of the barrel power spec. But, you know, compared to the Max Force, it does get up and go a little quicker. It feels a little bit more lighter on its feet, a little bit more agile. Not like the 240 or 260 the Freightliner was, but it does, you know, move along. And it still feels like, I don't know, there's some kind of disconnect. You know, the Freightliner just went when you hit the gas on it. Maybe the gear ratio is a little bit different. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe I know the gear ratio on the Freightliner was like 511, some ridiculously huge number. I'm thinking this one's geared more for highway, even though it can't go much faster than 73. It still picks up about the same as the Max Force, like acceleration wise. Max Force had a lot more hesitation when you first, like, if you were to foot to a floor from the stop, the Max Force sort of hesitated a bit. This doesn't do that, so that's why it gets off the line a little bit quicker. I think Penske blocks out the like the kick down features of the transmission. So like if you were to foot to the floor, it doesn't kick down a gear, it just keeps holding it. I think that's compared to the Ryder, I think Penske does that. Like my foot is to the floor right now, and I'll hold it to the floor until we get there at to 55. Still foot to the floor. Here cutting along. See if I can make this turn since nobody's here. Looks like I'm going to be able to just barely get into here. All right. can't say. It seems like the Freightliner let in a little bit more engine noise, but this has a lot more drivetrain noise, like tire and transmission whine, that kind of stuff. It seems like it has a lot more of that, so that's a little bit different. But it is very quiet. Like the DT would like make a really growly noise when you're sort of cruising, make this like grindy noise. Like say, you know, you're going like maybe 40 miles an hour and you're just putting along. This doesn't make that. I think this beforehand, I didn't think the Durastar was a very enjoyable truck to drive. With this Cummins in it, it makes it a lot more enjoyable. Not Freightliner enjoyable, but definitely much more reasonable. I mean, 220 horsepower is not a lot for a truck this size. It's kind of sacrilegious. It does sound a lot like a Freightliner or a Thomas C2, something along those lines. I mean, you just can't hear the engine at all, pretty much. You just hear tire and drone and driveline. And I think Penske did real good about putting air brakes in these trucks. The hydro brakes were, you know, really, really sketchy. They were like very, you had no like in between braking. You were either braking hard or not braking at all. And these air brakes, you get a little bit more control over it. I don't really fit on this road very well. I can't even see the road on that side of my mirror. It's all grass. Good hill up here we'll climb up. This cab is an air ride cab. It is on airbags. The rest of the chassis is not, nor is my seat. I think since Penske did put the airbags on the cab, it does make it for a nicer ride. Beforehand it was just a directly mounted to the chassis, and this one sits up about 5 inches higher than the Max Force with the hydro brakes on it, because it make room for the airbags and I guess the emissions. I want to say this is 560 foot-pounds of torque, or 520. But if I was to spec one of these out, I would definitely go for the 240 or 260 horsepower. That would give it almost gasoline-like response and loads of power. Way too much power, probably. The upper end of this truck, at least, it struggles to get, once it's past 45, it's working hard to get anywhere past that. And there's a big hill up here we're going to probably struggle a little bit with. There it goes. The person in front of me is not going fast enough. They're going. This is like a 55. Like kicking out of 6th gear maybe. Nope, must be already in 5th. Whole bunch of cars behind me. Oh, I got some turbo bark there too. All right. There's some engine fan noise too. And this is something, when you make right-hand turns like this, it's usually pretty hard to see out of your right window when you're at an angle. So it's always good to try to make yourself perpendicular to the road so you can actually see. There's that old Cummins fan, engine fan, screaming away. Alright, now here's where no, we don't have an engine brake in this truck. So what I can try to do is drop it in the 4th. There we go, let it hold 4th going down the hill. This seems to be doing pretty good. Just holding 4th, putting along at 45, which is pretty good. Now bump it back up. Back in the overdrive. doesn't engine brake or like retard the engine as good as the Freightliner did, or whatever setup or programming the Ryder truck had. Can't get this kind of power with like a V10 or something like that. It's just, you know, pulls and pulls and pulls. Definitely not a speed demon, that's for sure, but it does have definitely the torque. I would say the DT might have had a little bit more low-end grunt, like when you first start off. Once it gets out of that chugginess that it does, it did pull very well. But, you know, after first, second gear, you just lose it all. This truck seems pretty good overall. You honestly really can't tell that it's anything different than I mean, inside the truck, like button switch, you see you got a def gauge. That's the only difference really in the sound. You don't really tell the difference that it is a Cummins or not. I mean, even at idle, you can't really hear it. DT felt like you were starting up an earthquake. Alright guys, that should sum up for this little test drive and review. I hope you like it. Hope you support my channel and help me allow me to do more of these reviews for you guys. Comment, rate, subscribe. Thanks for watching.